Philippians chapter 4. Look at verse 6. It says, do not be anxious about anything. Boom, there's our word. But in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This is telling us the prescription for the stress and anxiety in our lives. It's telling it to us right here. And by the way, I want you to see something. It says everything. We should pray about everything. Do you know what that means? Everything can be affected by prayer. Everything. Women will write me and say, what use is prayer anyway if God is sovereign and He's going to do what He wants? He tells us that everything can be affected by prayer. Pray about everything. So we know that prayer is going to be the prescription for an anxious, driven care that we have. But not just any kind of prayer. This is what I want us to get. It's not just any kind of prayer that is going to help cure us of our anxiety. What kind of prayer is it that's going to help us with our anxiety? It's got to be the kind that's going to guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. It's going to be the kind of prayer that says, you are authority over this. I cannot control this. All control issues are pride. It says, I can make this work. Or the only reason this is not working is because they will not let me be in charge of it. If they just let me. I mean, I want this for your good. I want this for your good. And so this is what we're like in our homes. It's what we're like in our workplaces. He says, you bring it to me. You pray about every part of it. Sometimes I'll have to go to Him and get very specific. I'm afraid this is not going to get done. And this is not going to get, and if you don't tell Him this, if I don't tell Him, Lord, you better tell Him, because this has to get done. Tell Him. Pour out your anxiety. Pour out your hearts before Him. Psalm 62 says, for He is a refuge for you. All right, I want you to look back at our text. Let's begin to close it up in Luke chapter 10. After He's told Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Only one thing is absolutely necessary, and that's what Mary has chosen. Number 3 is this. At any given time, God gives us the right to choose. At any given time, God gives us the right to choose. Praise you, Lord. You are obviously still sitting there drawing breath. So this thing is not over. We don't have to decide just because we're 48, 58, 68, 30, whatever your age may be. We don't have to decide this is just the way I am. I just have an anxious personality. No, we can begin to change one choice at a time. Everybody say one choice at a time.
One choice at a time.
One choice at a time. That the very next time anxiety begins to rise up in me, I get to make that choice right then. I can either be worried and upset about many things, or I can go sit at His feet for a few minutes, lay this thing down to Him, and get up with a little peace of mind. One choice at a time to choose what is better. See, for many of us, the choice at times is not between the deepest pit of sin or sitting at the feet of Christ. Can be, and that's something we'll address at a later time. But for a whole lot of people, sometimes what the issue is that there are 1,000 things that vie for our attention, vie for our activity. And choosing those things that are better. And that one thing that is best. Let me tell you something, girls. We cannot do 1,000 things to the glory of God. And in our captivity of activity, we are losing something precious. We are losing excellence. Nothing is being done excellently because we're doing 10,000 things and none of it well. Anybody relate to what I'm saying? We can choose the one thing that is absolutely necessary that can never be taken from us. I want to tell you a story as we close. I think of it so often, and it brings such hope to my heart. Helps me when I'm facing what I'm going to choose in a situation, and I pray that it will bless you as well. Keith and I, a number of years ago, were given the very, very profound responsibility of raising a little boy for 7 years, from the time he was 4 years old until the time he was 11. Now, it never occurred to me in any of that time until close to the very end that he would not be with us throughout the duration of his young life. He was the child of Keith's first cousin on one side of his family. And she really needed the help, and so this is what we felt led of God to do. And we've been blessed in 1,000 ways by it, grown in 1,000 ways by it, and there were things that we had to face in ourselves, hardships and difficulties and conflicts that were some of the most challenging things we have ever been through in our entire lives. But I'm telling you, we loved deeply. We're so involved, we did not know what to do. I don't know if I've ever tried any harder at anything in my life, nor felt like I failed any more miserably at anything in my life. I was just absolutely sure I could love this child to wholeness. And you talk about anxiety eating me away through and through because I could not fix it. I could not fix it. Only God can fix it. Only God. But I want to tell you about an experience that happened early on. We had been told when he first came to live with us that he had been through so much that we would be wisest not to take him a lot of places for the night right at first. And we were very much involved in counseling at the time, making sure we were getting really good advice and getting some good godly counsel. And so we had been told, let him get acclimated a little bit. Well, my mother and dad lived in a city about an hour and 45 minutes away in Texas, and they were just dying for us to come and see them there. They had been to see him and met this little guy who, at that point, they considered to be their new grandchild at 4 years old. But they were just dying for us to come to their house. And so the time finally came. I asked Shirley if it would be okay. That was my counselor's name, and she said, I think that he's ready to go. And so we packed up the car, both girls and our little guy, and I headed with them to Bay City, Texas from Houston. And we had such a fun time going, and he was so thrilled. He would have thought he wanted to go, but it would have given him a lot of anxiety. It was not his choice not to be a goer, but we just needed to let him acclimate a little bit. I was so anxious to show him my mother's swimming pool. Now, my parents had a very, very modest home, always did. My dad has as fancy a home today as he's ever had, and it's still small, but it is so sweet and so beautiful. But my parents just never had a lot of extras. I was an Army brat, and that just was not a way of life to us to have lavish things. And so this house was no exception. Very, very tiny house, but my parents dearly loved